I'm guessing you're here because you want to get your bike set up with the Bimotal Elevate system. We're going to get right down to business, but first, make sure you have the installation instructions opened up and ready to reference. They're available as a PDF on bimotal.com. This video is a visual guide, but please refer to the instructions for torque specs, where to apply Loctite, and any other technical things that seem unclear from what I'm saying. Just like in the instruction manual, we're going to start with the most complicated parts of the installation first. That includes installing the motor mount with the proper spacing from the axle, as well as installing and centering the rotor gear on your rear wheel. If you can get through those steps, and I think you can, the rest of the installation is essentially just cable management. At this point, I'm going to assume you've removed your rear wheel, removed your brake rotor from your rear wheel, removed your rear brake caliper, and all the hardware from the frame. If you haven't, please go ahead and do that now, and then we'll get started. My bike's 180mm post mount, and I'm running the 203mm bimodal rotor. So I'll use the mounting bracket in the 180 to 203mm position, no other hardware required. Next, I'll install 4 0.5mm shims on each of the threaded tubes, and then snug the nuts with a 16mm wrench. Next, using a caliper, measure the distance from the upper surface of the adjustment nut to the bottom of your rear axle. In my case, I have 122.8mm. Then measure the thickness of your axle, making sure to measure at the point where the wheel bearings touch the axle. In my case, that's 11.89mm. Finally, we'll subtract half the axle diameter from the total distance between the bottom of the axle and the top of the adjustment nut. Using this number, we'll refer to the shim stack adjustment chart in the manual. So I'm at 116.86, so I'm going to take off 2 of the 0.5mm shims, and I'm going to add 2 of the 0.1mm shims, which are the really tiny ones. These really thin ones. So let's do that. Then I'll go ahead and install my brake caliper. I could have done that earlier before adjusting the shim stack height, but since I didn't, I'll do it now. Then I'll install the quick connect studs and thread them in until the top of the threaded part is flush with the top of the adjustment nut. Now it's time to test fit the motor. Place the motor on the quick connect studs, then adjust the height of the quick connect studs until the cams on the motor unit close firmly. Finally, we'll install the rotor gear on the rear wheel. Because the gear mesh has very tight tolerances, we'll use the countersunk bolts included in the Bimotal Elevate kit to align the rotor gear during installation. Install the 3 countersunk bolts as you would a regular brake bolt, snugging them up evenly. Then install 3 of the brake bolts, torquing them to spec. Remove the countersunk bolts and install the 3 remaining brake bolts, again torquing them to spec. Then we can test fit the wheel on the bike with the motor to make sure everything spins freely and smoothly without any binding or weird noises. So our next step at this point is to mount this battery tray. Ideally, we want it as low as possible in the frame to keep the center of gravity low. However, as you can see here, I've moved mine pretty far up to make sure that my shock does not hit my battery. This Velcro strap should wrap all the way around the frame and around the battery before doubling back on itself. Cable management here is a bit of a personal preference, but you need to get your throttle up to the handlebars. I prefer mine on the left side, facing down behind my dropper post lever. A lot of people like it on top like this. And of course, I'm sure there's some configuration where it would work on the right-hand side as well. The motor cable is going to run from the battery tray to the back of the bike, going inside of the seat stay. Depending upon your suspension configuration, there's many different ways that this could be run. If you're unsure how to make this work, I would recommend removing your shock with the cable in its potential location and then cycling the suspension to make sure there's no pinching or binding, make sure it's not getting pushed into the spokes or that it's going to hit your cranks. After all is said and done, you'll probably have some extra cable and you can use the zip tie holes on the bottom of the battery tray to tidy up the extra cables. Mounting the motor electrical connector is going to be your final step using these 2 M3 by 10mm bolts. Thread them in, but leave it loose so the connector can slide up and down. Then install the motor on the motor mounting bracket and push the electrical connector as far up as it'll go inside the motor housing. You want to make sure that the O-ring has disappeared up inside the motor housing. Then torque down the 2 M3 by 10mm bolts. At this point, I like to do one last final check, make sure everything is spinning freely, make sure nothing's hitting the cable, make sure your throttle is firmly attached so it can't rotate and get in the way of the brake lever. Then it's time to plug in the battery and give it a little test run.
Yeah!